Could a resolution to amend the U.S. Constitution allow President Trump and other future presidents a third term in office? Interesting question. During a rally in Las Vegas today, Trump jokingly mentioned serving a third term. This comes just days after a House Republican is seeking to pave the way for the president to do just that.
I didn't make any stops along the way. It will be the greatest honor of my life to serve not once, but twice, or 3 times, or 4 times. Headlines from the fake news. Now it will be to serve twice. For the next 4 years, I will not rest. I will not yield. And together we will not fail. We will win, win, win. We will bring back the American dream. We're going to bring it back. It will be the greatest honor of my life to serve not once, but twice, or 3 times, or 4 times.
This is the Nations Conspire channel. Welcome to today's show. A good friend of mine passed this information along to me, and it didn't take long for Republican congressmen to try and implement a bill that would allow Donald Trump to stay for a third term. And it's important to know about this. That's why I'm covering it, especially some of the language involved in this bill, such as, well, if you serve 1 term and then you have a break between terms, you should be allowed to serve 2 consecutive terms, but you can't serve 3 terms in a row. Now, I think that this is a precursor for what could potentially happen. Many of you know about the predictive programming out there with things like The Last President, a book that was written by Ingersoll Lockwood, which was written back in 1896, where the plot of that book was about Americans protesting a corrupt election process while the president's hometown of New York City is fearing the collapse of the republic after the transition of presidential power. And for those of you that don't know, Ingersoll Lockwood has multiple books where the main character in that book goes by the name of Baron Trump. So there's been things that have been planted in our minds for years now about, again, the end of democracy. How many times do we hear this term? The end of democracy. Democracy's over, even though we're technically a republic. And of course, we've heard Barack Obama, Barry Soetoro tell us that the end of the republic has never looked better. So this might be the precursor, again, to continually plant seeds throughout this entire 4-year reign of Donald Trump about him serving a third term. So Tennessee Representative Andy Ogles of Tennessee introduced a resolution to amend the 22nd Amendment, allowing former President Trump to seek a third term. It is H.J. Res 29, and it states, proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the United States to provide that no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than 3 times. So everybody out there should know you're not allowed to be elected more or serve more than 2 terms. And this is the first we're seeing of a bill that's actually reporting on 3 terms. Now, before I read the bill to you, it's very important not to forget all of those weird speeches that Donald Trump and Elon Musk were giving on the campaign trail, where they were talking about how you'll never have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good that you won't ever have to vote again.
And again, Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
And of course, what most of us think of when we hear that are countries that are communist regimes. I think of Vladimir Putin and signing a law allowing him to serve more terms as president of Russia. For those of you that don't know, Putin signed into law back in 2021 a change to the country's constitution that will allow him to run for 2 more 6-year terms, which would grant him the chance to remain in power until 2036. So that could be something that extends past 2036, because all these tyrants really need to do is just change the bills. Now, you might say, well, we have a Senate here and we have a House of Representatives, so everything is done fairly. We don't have to worry about a corrupt president trying to take more power than he's allotted. Well, all of us should know by now, especially after the way that these characters in Congress, and I call them characters because they're actors, how they've been portraying themselves out in the open. They are not to be trusted, just like Donald Trump is not to be trusted. So let me read the bill to you and what is being proposed. Proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the United States to provide that no person shall be elected to the office of president more than 3 times. In the House of Representatives is January 23rd, 2025. Mr. Ogles submitted the following joint resolution, which was referred to the Committee of the Judiciary. Here's the joint resolution. Proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the United States to provide that no person shall be elected to the office more than 3 times. Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress, assembled 2/3 of each house, concurring therein, that the following article is proposed as an amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years after the date of its submission for ratification. And quote, this is important, no person shall be elected to the office of president more than 3 times, nor be elected to any additional term after being elected to 2 consecutive terms. And no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. So specifically, if you read this in specifics, this is obviously just for Donald Trump, because it doesn't happen very often that one president is put into power, then another president supposedly wins the fake election, and then the previous president comes back in. It's very rare that that ever happens, and they strategically did that by design, because after Donald Trump's first term, they wanted to make things, look, what they do with the seesaw effect that people need to understand is that all they're doing is eliminating our constitutional rights. So they need Republicans in power to be extremists for 4 years. Then they need the other side in. And all they keep doing is stripping us of any freedoms that we have in the Constitution by passing bills and laws that are not favorable to any of us. So the seesaw is very important in stripping us of our rights. And when you control both sides, it's very easy to create a seesaw that goes back and forth every 4 years or so, every 8 years, tipping and turning, right? We all saw the damage done with Barack Obama when he was put into the office of president. All the things that were passed then, we all thought were pretty insane. That it was pretty insane that we were allowing a president to do some of the things that Obama did. Now, many people out there are probably too young to remember. Maybe people just forget because of how insane it's been over the last 4 years. And that's probably very likely, because it's really like they're inflicting a form of trauma-based mind control on us with the ridiculous stuff that they're doing. So we can look back at Obama, and most people would say, well, it wasn't as bad as Biden, because they weren't talking about castrating your kids and how you need to let people dress in drag and come into the schools and hang out with your children. They weren't doing stuff like that. But they did that, obviously, by design, by taking a break from Donald Trump for 4 years and making everything that was going on was a nuisance to everybody's day-to-day life, right? Now, the Democrat citizens out there would not admit to that, because that's part of being in a communist party. You don't question it. You're seeing the same thing now with MAGA. They're defending all the things that people like me are trying to expose. They refuse to believe what AI governance is. They refuse to believe the dangers of what they're trying to do by removing human beings from Congress with some of this other stuff, which I'll cover in a separate video, in regards to literally paying off politicians to resign from office. Well, who do you think they're going to be replaced with? At first, they're going to say, look, we don't need these people. They don't even show up. They don't even do anything. Why? So that you accept that and you say, yeah, what are we paying their salary for? They don't even show up. But somebody's going to have to fill some of those roles. And that's where AI comes into place. And guess what? They'll tell you that AI doesn't cost you a penny to actually operate. It'll be free and they'll be serving you for free. You just won't realize at first that you're under full control by artificial intelligence. You're enslaved by it. I'm sure in the beginning they'll make it seem like everybody's getting tax breaks and everything's wonderful with AI governance in place. And again, like I mentioned in previous videos, all they have to do is switch somebody out, switch something there, or little by little just continually change laws, and then you'll start feeling that tight grip of artificial intelligence controlling your life, which is no different than what we see in China, a surveillance state where people can't even board airplanes if they oppose or say anything on social media that sounds like it's anti-government. So yes, obviously by design, by having Biden in there, doing all that stuff, the acting was done so over the top with Joe Biden, where he was falling upstairs, falling downstairs, couldn't complete sentences. It was ridiculous. I mean, we've never seen anything like it. And then the speeches from Kamala Harris. That's all done by design to make you want something like this to be passed. Because 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if we were talking about George Bush adding a third term to his presidency, Republicans wouldn't have supported that. They'd be like, no way. That's not our concept. That's not the way we do things here in America. We don't support that. But now things have changed so drastically because the psychosis has gotten so bad. And a lot of it has to do with technology and the advancements in technology and people constantly consuming news. So they're able to come after you every single day with ridiculous news stories that are going to drive you nuts. They do it by design. It's literally a form of trauma-based mind control, watching the news. It literally is. I mean, if you read books on MKUltra and trauma-based mind control, you'll see that a lot of it is just pretty much the same tactics they use on us every day, from scaring you into viruses, into poisoning yourself, or just talking about insane things like it's normal, which is what they've really spent the last 4 years on. I mean, people couldn't even believe some of the stuff that they were hearing their president talking about doing and calling their own citizens terrorists, all the stuff that was going on. I mean, all done by design so that you want Donald Trump to get an extra term over the next 4 years as we watch him implement this new world order infrastructure. I mean, we're already a week plus in, and we've seen literally talk of combining Canada and Greenland with America, which is the Club of Rome's North American Union. We've seen them rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. We see now them talking about paying off a large portion of federal workers just so they resign, as if we don't need these people. We've heard conflicts with other countries who are angry. And I mean, so much stuff in the last week, not to mention that AI infrastructure bill. And it's also important to note, you know, and a lot of people don't know about this. I showed you the clip of Trump, right? Talking about how you'll never have to vote again. We'll have this thing fixed and rigged so good, right? While he's implementing artificial intelligence governance. Don't forget when Klaus Schwab talked about how there weren't going to be elections anymore, that they would be able to use AI, which is an utter joke because they're never going to allow any people to elect the president of the United States or the prime minister of another country ever under any circumstance. So that shows you how deep the psychosis is. They know these people exist. They know how much money they have, how much power they have. They're the ones who control the tech, yet we take their word for it when these elections happen, which, again, is why they wanted you to think that they were so anti-Trump and he was so anti-deep state. And, oh, man, they had to make it so big that they couldn't rig it. Why couldn't they rig it? Why in the world could they rig it one time and not another? Oh, because nobody would have believed it? Well, nobody believed it the last time. So why couldn't they rig it if they didn't want him in? He's the perfect guy to do what he's doing. But this is Klaus Schwab talking about the removal of elections. For anybody out there that hasn't heard this clip before, and he's referring to artificial intelligence being able to determine the next president, which means they're determining it because they could tell you that AI and all this stuff is accurately reading everything, that it doesn't see color, it doesn't see gender, it doesn't see anything. It's just numbers, it's just statistics. And these suckers will eat it up hook, line, and sinker. But keep in mind, AI infrastructure being implemented in America as we speak. And this is what Klaus is talking about.
The technology now is, and digital technologies mainly have an analytical power. Now we go into a predictive power, and we have seen the first examples, and your company very much involved into it. But then the next step could be to go into a prescriptive mode, which means you do not even have to have elections anymore because you can already predict, and afterwards you can say, why do we need elections? Because we know what the result will be.
So again, you have Donald Trump talking about never leaving office. You have some of the predictive programming over the years with, mentioning that book, right? The Last President, and the connection with Barron Trump as well in all of the writings of Ingersoll Lockwood. And now you have them bringing this bill. Now, do I think that this bill is going to get passed? No, I do not think it's going to get passed. But every time they do this stuff where they talk about a third term, it's conditioning for you. That's all that it is. It's mind control. They condition you into accepting it. So it's not a shock to you, because when things are a total shock to the system, there's a chance that people might actually revolt. There might actually be a revolution where they feel like, oh my gosh, they just overreached. They just did this out of thin air. So they tell you about it. They condition you with it. So you get to a point where you go, whatever. They've been talking about Trump serving a third term for 10, 20 years now, or however long it's been. They've been talking about Trump for 10 years. They talked about it when he was in power the first time, because they did. The first time Trump was in power, they talked about how he would not relinquish power, and they were afraid that he was going to do exactly this. But he can do this, because remember, if you think that these things that the Senate and the House are doing aren't a show and a charade, they can do whatever they want. They all work together, and they do it for the betterment of their brotherhood. Because remember, they're all in secret societies. They're the ones doing this. They're the ones responsible for all the rifts that you might have in your personal life. They're the ones responsible for any family members you might have who are no longer here because they got duped into putting something inside of their body. They're responsible for all of it. So this is a step very quickly into getting these seeds planted in your mind about, specifically, you can't be in office 2 terms in a row and then serve a third term. But if you have a break between terms, you could stay in for another term. I mean, it's literally written for Donald Trump. And of course, Democrats are going to be in an uproar about it. But what are they actually going to do when you think about it, right? If you think about how Democrats have been molded in our society, they're the biggest pushovers imaginable. So they can do whatever they want, and those people will just complain online about it, but they'll be forced into accepting it. And then, of course, they'll see a wave of censorship online because they'll be questioning the opposite political regime. And Christians and conservatives will cheer for it because they got censored so bad and they had to go through it for 4 years of chaos that they don't care if they literally rewrite the Constitution as long as they don't have to have a bumbling fool like Joe Biden back in power. And that's all done by design. So, ladies and gentlemen, the talk is already happening. They're already discussing with you a potential third term. Less than 10 days in, they want to pass a bill, which shows you that not only how insane these people are, because, it's insanity to even be thinking this way right now, because nobody even knows what 4 years are going to look like. But it shows you that it's part of the psychosis, because this guy could not be showing up in Congress trying to pass this bill unless everybody was in on it. And again, they'll probably, I'd say 100% likely that this gets rejected. But don't forget, all it takes is something like Putin did. Sign yourself in for a longer term. All it takes is, we're in a war, like Zelensky. We don't have to change presidents anymore. And do you think the conservatives would complain if we're in a war in, 20 going into 2028, 2029, and we get rid of the election or there's an outbreak or something, they'll say great. They'll say great, even though, of course, 4 years ago with Biden, everybody was afraid, even this past election, that he was going to actually do something like that to keep power. It was trending almost every week on social media that people were afraid that he was going to declare this or pass that, right? All these things they tell you about, they're conditioning you for it to actually become a reality. And that's really one of the most important methods of mind control. It's repetition and conditioning. And you're seeing both happening right now for Donald Trump to potentially remain in office or change the entire structure of the government. Because don't forget all the predictive programming with the Roman Empire. They're doing that by design too. That's not some random thing with Elon Musk's obsession with the Roman Empire. When I talked about Donald Trump declaring the golden age, yes, I was talking about the golden dawn, but I also referenced the golden age of the Roman Empire, where peace came for years. And what was Rome doing? They were acquiring other countries, which sounds exactly like what Donald Trump is doing already a week in to his new term. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.